Okay, じゃあスクリーンをお願いします。Okay, I think that's my screen. Yes. So I'm going to show you today some very, very cool technology that a very, very smart guy, Shai Abadan, who created a system for exploring a large collection of photos in virtual 3D space. So these days, people have very many photos. Very many photos. So what do you do with all these photos? You've got 10,000 photos, 20,000, 30,000. What can you do with all of those photos? Well, we have a system that we're developing to allow you to navigate through your photos. So imagine you've got this large collection of photos, from, say, Photoshop Express, Flickr, PhotoBucket. The algorithm we use works best with upwards of 10,000 photos, which I'm sure everybody has. And what it does is it looks at the content. It actually analyzes what the photo is, and it breaks it up into little squares and looks for similar matches among the photos. So in this way, if you have photos that are an outdoor scene, it's not going to give you as the next photo when you're navigating something that's an indoor scene. So it separates that into buckets. And what it does is the algorithm creates these classifiers. It classifies the content and then analyzes on the fly what pictures belong in what classification. And then it uses another called gist creation, another technique that the algorithm uses to separate the content based on translation. So say you want to move from one photo to another, and you want to move through maybe right to left or left to right. So this takes and cuts the photo in half, say, or it translates it so that it can nicely match something that looks like that. And I'll show you that in a second. So then, lastly, combining those images. So you've got all of these images, you've got them classified. Now you can move through them. So it can create wider than reality panoramas. Wider than reality panoramas means you can just kind of keep going. So I'm going to keep going and I'll show you what it looks like. So in the upper left, you've got the query image. So what it does is it breaks it up into squares and then shows you what the best match is based on the makeup of that content. You can see those two photos are very similar. And then over on the right here, we've got other best matches. Now down at the bottom left, say you want to move through space. So now in the green area, it takes a look at just that area, and then it rotates it and says, what would be on the other side of that? Well, if you look at the picture, the best match is completely different than the top one, because the top one potentially is being used to go inside of the image. It's going to keep going and going, and it's going to look at kind of like you're going down a road. The one on the bottom, if you're panning to the right, it's going to translate and make that look seamless, essentially. So, a little more about how it does that. So up at the top, you've got a bunch of images that are strung together in a kind of panorama. The second layer of images shows you where those images blend, and that's really important. It looks at the photos and it blends them in ways that, to our eyes, makes it look pretty seamless. And then the masks and the seams shows how it's doing that blending. And then the final sequence is at the bottom. I think I've talked enough about how this works. So let's go ahead and show a little bit about how this works. So this represents a great number of photos. You go into one area, and now you're moving through space of your photos. you keep moving. You're still moving, man. And you finally stop. So that is infinite image. So another thing that you can do with this algorithm, with this technology, is something called image taxi. So it starts in one place, it looks through all of your photos, and takes you on a tour. It's a virtual kind of, one photo to another. And you end up, you give 2 photos you like, you say, I want to go from this place to this place. How do I get there? Well, every time is different. Every time it takes you on a new adventure through different photos. So now this is infinitely zooming. You can go back out of a picture as well and see where you end up. Yes, that is very familiar. Now the interesting thing about this is where you started isn't necessarily where you end up. Now watch closely this photo. Oh, hold on a second. Operator error. Okay, so now it's panning out, it's putting some photos together, now it goes back, and that's a completely different scene than you started with. So in that way, this could go on endlessly. You can endlessly loop and move around through different images. So this is great for creating panoramas. We've got a number of photos that are similar. We can stitch them together. And that is infinite images. Thank you.